Hello and welcome to the Bald Ambition Podcast. I'm your bald host, Mookie Spitz, and the one with the ambition today is Mr. Mike Gatto. Welcome aboard, Mike.
Great to be here, Mookie.
You were part of the California legislature back when I would fairly say we were a little bit more civilized as a state and as a country, culturally, politically. Give us a sense of perspective, what it was like then when you were actually laying down the law in California. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're seeing now through the lens of somebody who saw it before things got kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's almost embarrassing to start thinking of myself as another era because I stay so active politically. But what you said is really accurate. I got elected. I served 4 terms in the California State House and the California Legislature. And I left office on January 1, 2017. And of course, that was right before Donald Trump was sworn in for his first term as president. And right before, I think by any metric, you could argue that our country really, really got extremely polarized. There was some of that in that election year, for sure, the 2016 election year. But since then, it's like we've turned a corner. There's very little logic left. People seem like they will back their cult of personality candidate, right or wrong, on both sides. And also, you don't hear people talk about the B word anymore. You don't hear people talk about bipartisanship anymore. It's almost like it's quaint. Oh, look at that. That's like something that like Bill Clinton and George Bush talked about, right? And it's really a shame because what I was fond of saying is 2 principles, right? Number one, almost nobody out there is as partisan as the people you see on TV. They're just not. You might have somebody who feels really strongly about this issue, but is kind of nuanced on that one and likes the other, and that's how average Americans are. They're nuanced. And the second thing, and this is the most important, is if a lawmaker can come up with an idea that like 70% of the population supports, chances are that's a really good idea. And God forbid it might actually get done. But if you're coming up with something that 45% of the population likes, chances are it's not something that you have consensus on and you got more work to do. So I like bipartisanship is what I guess I'm trying to say.
From a messaging point of view, one of the focus of this podcast in my career is in marketing, public relations. And I like to say that politicians are like brands. They've got their own identity. Their platform is like their product or service campaign. And right now we're in an attention economy where if you could own the airwaves, you pretty much have a pathway to the White House. That's self-evident by the success of Trump. Not once, but twice. So rather than focus on Trump through the lens of a Democrat, such as yourself, what did the Democrats do wrong? And even more significantly, what are they doing wrong now to hold themselves back, if you will, in the face of someone who's so diametrically opposite every single liberal value and policy? It should be a crapshoot. It should be easy, but it's so damn difficult. Why is that?
How much time do we have? So, I mean, I guess the first place that I would start is authenticity. People now have every bit of information at their fingertips. It started with Wikipedia. It's continued with AI. And it's also, we have a very, democratized media economy where people can get information on whatever they want by searching for a YouTube video. So you're not going to, I think, convince the public of some out there idea unless you're authentic. People know that there are all these different viewpoints out there. They can look up stuff. They can do the research for themselves. And increasingly, by the way, the algorithms will spit back what they think that you want to hear. But the bottom line is what can't be faked, what can't be sort of, what you really cannot get past is when a politician is authentic, when they say what's on their mind and it's raw and it's unfiltered. And those human cues, people inherently trust that. So as crazy as it sounds, I think in 2016, people trusted Bernie Sanders more because he's authentic. He says what's ever on his mind. And people trusted Donald Trump more. I mean, obviously a plurality or a majority, last time a majority of the country did trust him more because he got elected twice. So it's an issue of trust. It's a matter of being authentic. That is something that Democrats have been very, very poor with. And then secondly, it's also a matter of communication. I think most Democrats communicate with university speak. It's like, well, gee, that microaggression, was triggering and it had the effect of othering, right? And people don't talk like that. People don't talk like that. I mean, it would really just be better to say, when that guy said something about my hair, it pissed me off. That's much better, right? You don't have to call it a microaggression. I mean, just be honest, just be real, right? And that type of university speak, I think, hurts Democrats. And, look, my Democratic friends would say, oh, well, we're just smarter and we're more educated. And there might be some truth to that in the modern world. Who knows? Maybe Democrats, are the coastal elites now. Okay, that's true. We've seen those changes. But you still have to know how to communicate to large swaths of people. I'll tell you, one of the best communicators that I know is a Congress member from Los Angeles named Brad Sherman. He's bald. He has a hairstyle that looks very similar to yours. He's brilliant. I mean, I can't tell you how smart this guy is. His IQ has got to be off the charts. He graduated top of his class at UCLA undergrad, which is 30,000 students. Top of his class, Harvard Law, double valedictorian. He's done very well in life. People who are smart usually do. He's fantastically wealthy. When you see him go work a union hall and you see him walk up to people, does he walk up to people and say, I'm Brad Sherman, top of my class, Harvard Law. I'm smart. I'm brilliant. You need to vote for me because I know what's better for you than you do. No. He walks up to a guy, and he says, hey, I'm Brad Sherman. Have a comb. You have more use for it than I do. And it's such an icebreaker, right? You got like a blue collar guy there. He's like, this guy's got a sense of humor. He's a good communicator. And that to me is increasingly a lost art.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle, the comic, referred to Donald Trump as an honest liar.
I love it.
And I like that characterization because in that honesty is that sense of genuineness, that down-to-earth quality that resonates emotionally with American voters.
Yeah.
And you can contrast that too, especially over the last 4 or 5 years with Biden, who was obviously aged. The Democratic Party was lying about his condition. And most significantly, Uncle Joe was never to be seen. Trump is ubiquitous. Yep. So at the very least, Americans give him attention because they feel that they're getting attention, that our president is doing something.
Yeah, I mean, when he shows up to WrestleMania or whatever they're calling it now, and high fives people in the crowd and stuff like that, that is powerful, right? That shows vitality. It shows interest in what people are interested in. And you're right. Like, you can never really picture Joe Biden doing that. Well, he didn't. He didn't do stuff like that.
Yeah, so that lack of presence was one thing. Let me focus for a second on an issue which is particularly hot, which is a lens through which I think a lot of this comes out, which is the crime problem. Now, as we know, Trump has rolled in the National Guard into DC, and he's on a roll. Trump wants to do it in Baltimore, Chicago, New York. The left is crying authoritarian fascist takeover, overreach of the feds, posse comitatus. end of the world as we know it. But the messaging coming from the Democrats to counteract this is doing the opposite of making an emotional connection with their own constituents. Specifically, they're saying, Trump, you can't roll in the National Guard because crime is down 30%. And when American voters hear that, they hear the Democrats are bowing out of their responsibility for combating crime. And Trump might be overdoing it, but at least he's giving it a shot. My car just got jacked. I just got attacked on the New York subway. Millions of Americans are living in fear, regardless of the statistics. And I think that's where some of the Democratic condescension comes from, which is, are you stupid or what? Look at the statistics. Crime has gone down for the last decade. We don't need the National Guard. And all people are hearing is the Democrats are light on crime in the same way they were light on the border and they were light on inflation. Donald Trump might be an a-hole and he might be erratic and he might be that jerk, but he's our jerk and he's addressing our problems. Why can't the Democrats figure this out?
So, Mookie, you just hit on something that I think is, so you've made many, in our short time together, you've made many brilliant points about politics. It's almost like you understand it better than I do. But the point you just made, I think, is the most important point for Americans to understand, because you don't understand politics unless you understand what you just said. Like LBJ had this motto, I'm going to call my opponent a pig effer and let him have to deny that he's a pig effer, right? And what Donald Trump has essentially done here is he has forced Democrats to stick up for crime, like to go up and like, oh, there's nothing wrong in our cities, right? Now, and let me tell you a little bit about crime statistics that people understand. There's 2 points I make on that. Number one, yes, murders are down compared to before. And there's lots of complex reasons why murders are down. But every single other crime under the sun is actually up. And the statistics aren't always accurate. And I'll tell you why. To get a crime statistic, right, most reporters go on convictions. And to get that conviction, you have to have somebody call the police. When your window was broken by a homeless person and someone stole something out of your car, you actually have to call the police. And a lot of people don't do that anymore. So that would not even start the chain. Then the police have to show up. They have to say, well, someone broke a window in San Francisco and we're going to show up, which nowadays, that's not a certain thing. Then they have to take a report. And again, most of the time now in big cities, and I live in Los Angeles, the police will come out and say, oh, I'm sorry, this happened. And, we're not going to catch the guy. So they don't take a report. And then after the report, you got to assume that they catch somebody. Big if, that when they catch somebody, they actually book them. Because in California, we have cite and release. We have misdemeanor cite and release. They don't book them. And then you got to assume that the DA prosecutes and then that gets a conviction. So there's 8 things in this chain. And I can tell you in big cities, that chain is broken. And so you're just not seeing the statistics. And so you're basically, you have a situation where people who live in these cities, they know darn well that quality of life crimes are through the roof. But you have politicians, as you noted, forced to say, oh no, crime's no problem. And that is so...
It is
right?
Suicide
Yep.
for Democrats. I'm on TikTok and I related a story of being physically assaulted on the New York subway, which is a fact. I described living on New York's Upper West Side in a fairly middle-class Manhattan neighborhood where I had to step over homeless people to get to the grocery store, where I felt my security was threatened on a daily basis. And I had comments coming from people accusing me of being a liar. And I was a liar because, are you ready for it? Crime is down 30% in New York. And there's more crime in Mobile, Alabama than in Manhattan, New York. So my lived experience is invalid. That's what's happened.
And you can't tell people it's like, how many muggings, how many break-ins, how many burglaries are too many, right? You tell that to the person who just got terrorized because, we know a young lady in Los Angeles where a homeless guy has taken a liking to her and he chases her with a machete.
Yeah.
And it's like, the cops are like, well, has he hit you? They won't come out because assault hasn't happened or a battery hasn't happened yet. And she's like, well, no, but I'm calling you so he doesn't. Because if a machete meets a limb, the limb usually loses. And then secondly, like, how many is too many? Like, how many people getting assaulted is too many? Like, and you try telling that person, well, crime overall is down, but your experience doesn't matter. It's a losing message.
It's so deeply insulting, and it mirrors the mistakes that the Democrats have been making for over a decade. The border has been a problem. What to do about that border and the causes of the border being a problem are all complex issues. But
Sure.
to deny that the border was a problem or to ignore it was, to your exact point, fuel to the fire of Trump's wrath. It's like asking your neighbor if they're still beating their wife.
Yes.
Right? That's what Trump has been doing with the Democrats since 2015.
They are loaded
And it
questions.
keeps working. This is what drives me nuts, which is, come on, it's like newsflash. Specifically, instead of saying, Trump, don't send in the National Guard because crime is down 30%, say, we understand that crime remains a problem. We feel that local law enforcement is most empowered to handle that issue, and bringing in the feds is just going to create a big mess and overcomplicate stuff. We're going to own crime. We're going to do a better job of crime, and we are there for you to protect you and your family. How different is that message from, it's down 30%. Why are you guys even worried about it?
I mean, I would go a step further. I would say, we agree that, any crime is too much. And there's a problem in parts of our city. And so what I just did is I just submitted a federal grant application for, $15 million in new equipment and funds to hire new officers. And I'm hoping you'll approve it, right? I mean, like, throw it back on him. Now, of course, he'll say, I don't trust your force. But that forces him to then get into an argument with the police, right? And so, it just, there's things you can do, but I'll tell you, as we both agree, the way that they handled it, that's not the best way to handle it.
Yeah. So what could be done about this? I think part of the problem is there's an enormous vacuum in the Democrat Party for a leader. Bernie Sanders was decades ahead of his time. Remember, he just kept saying like a mantra, the working people of this country, the working people of this country. Right. And then when Trump won again, and he won the votes of the working people of this country to the minorities, right? Unprecedented flip from Democrats to Republicans across the board, swing states, every state. They just came out with the registration numbers for 30 states.
Yeah, those are ugly.
Democrats are down 2.5 million and Republicans are up 2.5 million. So there's a delta of 5 million registered voters who have flipped over the course of the last 4 years. And that was when Democrats held the presidency and controlled most of Congress most of the time. So, hello.
That's a flashing light. You know what I tell Democrats and Republicans what's at stake with the current setup of government that we have it? You have somebody in Trump who's not afraid to do something, right? It's almost like what FDR did. Something's got to be done. The other side is perceived as not doing enough for the Great Depression. So FDR just started doing all sorts of different stuff. And much of the time, he ignored the law, FDR did. He stretched the law. He created new bureaucracies that really didn't exist. He got new executive powers. He ran for 4 terms, which was unheard of up until that point, even though it wasn't illegal yet. And Trump is really doing the same, right? It's like he's doing these tactics that are pushing the law, like putting the National Guard in the streets. But the problem is that today's cutting edge tactics, they rapidly become tomorrow's status quo. I tell people, like, how many times were articles of impeachment introduced for a president up to Nixon. And it's like, 2 or 3, right? But how many times since Bill Clinton? Every single president. It's just now it's the standard thing you do. If you're a member of Congress and you want to get some headlines, you introduce articles of impeachment, right? And I believe that every time that a president takes a step that is pushing the envelope, the next president will do it too. And we just get into this place where our freedoms go down and down and down, and the rule of law goes down and down. But the main reason why I have an issue with Trump is what it does to the quality of people in the Democratic Party. And this take is unique. This is not what people think. What I mean is we have a lot of incompetent officials in the Democratic Party. Both parties do. But our officials have gotten a bye. They have gotten a pass for the almost 6 years that Trump has been in office, because all that they need to do if they screw up is pick a fight with Trump, and the voters forgive them. And when they run for office, they put out mail and TV ads that say, I'm not Trump, I'm fighting Trump. Oh, okay, great. The voters, Democrats hate Trump. So, okay, we're going to, and it's like the Democratic Party has given our own officials a massive get out of jail free card. In some cases for corruption, get out of jail. Because it's like, if your only criteria to be in public office right now as a Democrat is that you're tweeting against Trump, that's a pretty low bar, folks. And so we don't have a good bench. We don't have strong leaders. We don't have people who have ever faced a test of fire or debates. We just have a generation who's grown up where it's like, I'm not Trump, hey, elect me. And that's enough in Democratic districts.
Yeah, but you bring up a paradox. On the one hand, the only game in town is fighting Trump. And yet no one really seems to have the wherewithal or effective strategy to really bring him down or to hit him where it counts. Maybe Gavin Newsom recently is an exception, and you make a little face, and I'm wondering how you feel about that. For example, Gavin had a podcast. He decides to go digital DIY just like everybody else, maybe about 15 years too late. So he tries to do the Joe Rogan, Mark Maron thing, and then he brings on the likes of Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon, because Gavin's trying to show that he's a middle of the road kind of guy and he wants to listen to everybody, and he's the archetypal centrist. Bravo, Gavin. Now, did that short circuit? Probably, but I could see his intent. Then he one-ups it a little bit with his tweets now, mimicking Trump's narcissism and lies, all caps, celebrating Gavin the Great. And he's putting a mirror up to Trump, which is kind of interesting. And perhaps most significantly, he's brought gerrymandering openly and unabashedly to California. Now there's going to be a special election in November to vote on redistricting in between the census as a reaction to what happened in Texas. So again, from the vantage point of marketing, public relations, messaging, to me, this is on point. You might not like Gavin personally, and there might be inherent hypocrisy and a double standard in what he's doing. But I just see at least there's leadership, there's an approach, there's an attack dog going against Trump, using his own weapons against him. And frankly, that's better than, as you say, legions of Democratic politicians tweeting into the void.
Yeah, but okay, let me give a counterpoint to that. So a couple things. If you notice that Mr. Newsom, who I think is a tremendously gifted politician, he is somebody I know well, somebody I worked with when he was lieutenant governor, still have a cell phone number, he's the governor. I know him well. I think he's tremendously gifted, and he's certainly raised his profile with this. But if you think about it, both of the things you gave examples of, the going towards the center and having Charlie Kirk on your show and saying he makes good points, how long did that last? Like maybe 5 minutes, right? On the political scale, I mean, it felt like 5 days, and maybe it lasted 5 weeks. But that was a reaction to Trump. And their redistricting, battle that's going on right now, and his tweets and everything like that, that's a reaction to Trump. And what I've learned time and time again is that if you are reacting, period, and definitely if you're reacting Trump, somehow you're losing. I think you're losing. I think the answer for Democratic politicians, if they want to actually make a difference, would be to ignore Trump, take the wind out of his sails. Just like, for example, if I was a member of Congress right now, what I would be doing is I would put forth a piece of legislation. I would go down to the border and I would put forth a piece of legislation with a Republican from a border state standing with me. And there are ones who would do it. That tries to fix the immigration system. I would not seek to involve Trump. I would not mention him. I would not mention Biden. I would not mention them. I would just say the border's been screwed up for 30 years. But the American economy continues to need workers to come here. And there's so many people who want to come here. And they want to follow the law, and they just want to work, and they want to be American citizens. And it's not just folks from Mexico, folks. It's people from Germany and Japan and England and Scotland and all around the world. They want to come here and just be Americans and work. And our system is broken. Like when we're letting in like 1,000 people legally from each country or 500 people legally each year, clearly that's not enough. And I would just put forth legislation and just boom, boom, boom. I've got an idea, and here's my idea. And the idea speaks for itself. And I've got Republicans working with me too. And I would just do it right. And like things like that, you're actually being for something versus being against something. You're putting forth an idea into the marketplace of ideas rather than just reacting. And I just don't see that. Tell me if you see it, but I don't see anybody leading with new ideas. I see everybody just reacting to Trump.
Yeah, in principle, I agree with you 100%. I think it would be a gloriously holistic, bipartisan, and it would be solutions focused rather than clickbaity, attention-getting, headline-y garbage. So I agree with you in principle. In practice, however, I don't think it'll cut through the noise. I don't think anyone would, and by anyone, I'm being hyperbolic, but I just mean by most people won't care. And the reason most people won't care is because people generally don't know or understand or pay attention to policy. Policy is deeply complex, nuanced, and takes a lot of attention. However, if you grab a headline and you go against the leader, then instead of swimming upstream, this is a common practice in marketing, in positioning, and branding and PR. If you are Pepsi and Coke is number one, you have no choice but to go head on against the leader because they have cut a swath. They dominate the news cycle. And if you try to go kind of on the sidelines to build your own grassroots message to gain attention that way, you're going to be annihilated just by the momentum of all this news.
Let me phrase that in a way that, to borrow on your analogy, I am saying if you are Pepsi, don't be Pepsi and don't go after Coke. I'm saying become Liquid Death, become Celsius, become
7-Up, the Uncola.
Yeah, like put out something that is completely new and independent. And look, Celsius took off. It didn't take off by attacking Coke. Now, by the way, I don't know who owns, like for any listener out there who's a real...
We're not promoting products here,
We're not
folks.
promoting products. I also don't know. I mean, for all I know, Coca-Cola bottling could have bought Celsius. It could be yeah. But I'm saying like these brands that have emerged, like Liquid Death Water or some of these other, like they're clever marketing, and they did find a path without attacking the number one big guy. Like there are ways to do it. Right before COVID started, I put out a ballot initiative on homelessness. I did not attack Gavin Newsom. I did not attack the mayor of Los Angeles. It was implied, but I went out there and I just said, I've got this idea on homelessness and I want to, get it out there into the marketplace of ideas. And I got tremendous response to it. I did it by writing op-eds. I know that sounds crazy, by doing broadcast media, by doing podcasts, by doing radio, by doing social media. And it was a clever idea. I mean, don't get me wrong. You need substance. You need to have like a product that people want, right? But I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that Democrats have the product, right? You got to have some kind of platform in politics. And I'm not sure that we have the right mix for these times.
But is it platform? Is it policy? Or is it personality?
So I call it what I used to call that the 4 Ps. It would drive my staff crazy. I said policy, politics, press, and people. We don't have the right policies or the right platform. We don't know how to handle the press, or the media as it's called now. And we certainly don't have the right people in the form of the right candidates. We don't have the right leaders right now who people are excited to go vote for. It's like, and again, Gavin Newsom, to his credit, he has rocketed to ascendancy, but 2026, when he's out of office, is a long way away. It's a lifetime in politics. 2028 is 7 lifetimes away in politics. There could be some candidate who's running for, mayor of South Bend, I say that jokingly, or lieutenant governor in Iowa, who we haven't even heard their name yet. They're not even in office yet. And they could rocket to ascendancy in the party as like the new AOC.
Look at Barack Obama, who was I'm from Chicago, and most people in Chicago didn't know who the hell this guy was until the Democrat convention. And he shows up out of nowhere. He delivers an amazing speech, and all of a sudden, he's a contender.
He was
I agree with you. Someone we don't even know could be it. And that would be great. But let me ask you the $64 billion Democratic question. And I think it's at the heart of what I see as the civil war inside the Democratic Party. And I think that helps explain why no one is really percolated to the surface. And the way I could kind of couch this is, on the one hand, you have the Gavin Newsom middle of the road moderate guy. They look at the electoral college, they look at the map, and they want the presidency. And they've concluded, through their own math, that only a moderate can do it. That if you're too far to the left, you go into 86 gender land and trans sports, and you trigger the hell out of the bedroom communities in Ohio and Michigan and all the swing states, and you will lose. So they go into the middle. And that's why Gavin had Charlie Kirk on a show to show those bedroom communities that, hey, I'm that middle of the road guy. I am not a pinko commie lefty, right? So that's one side of the Democratic Party. The other side are the Bernie bros, who have reincarnated themselves like vampires over and over again, cross-generationally, because this guy has been talking about the working people of this country for 30 years, all right? And they're even more leftist than Bernie. This is the AOC crowd, the progressive liberal left. Their conclusion is, we got to go as radically left as Trump has gone batshit crazy right, which is, we're in support of the unitary executive too. We want a powerful president too. And you know what? This one is going to go green, going to go healthcare for everybody, is going to go universal basic income, a la Andrew Yang. And we are just going to go nuts with progressive left. And that will win the election, because you need to polarize people. You need to get the base excited. And we're going to follow this Trump strategy, but from the other end of the political spectrum. So how do you see this? To me, this is the number one issue. I don't hear it talked about enough. And I think this schism is precluding talent from bubbling to the surface, because the elders of the Democrat Party can't figure out whether they want to back an AOC with her progressive liberalism or a Gavin with Charlie Kirk as vice president.
Great question. And it's probably the one thing you'll ask me today where I will acknowledge, or I'll admit, or whatever you want to say, that I don't have the answer. I could see a scenario where a very, very lefty candidate did get through and did have a fighting chance against, J.D. Vance or whoever's nominated in 2028. because the person is authentic, right? Because they can talk to people, and people start to feel like, well, maybe these ideas aren't so bad and blah, blah, blah. But the couple things that I will push back on is this notion that Trump is that far right wing. He definitely has supporters who, take positions that, 25 years ago would be considered fascist or stuff that you would not speak of in the Overton window of American politics. However, he himself has taken positions like tariffs, which is, by the way, in Ohio and Michigan, in the union halls of those places, tariffs are wonderful. They love them
Oh,
because they
the
feel like,
union people
yeah,
too
yep,
are loving him, right?
yes,
The steel workers
yes,
love him.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. The Republican Party has taken abortion out of their platform entirely. They view it as a done deal, and it's something that they don't even talk about in their platform anymore, which to me is amazing. I never thought I'd see that day.
Well, that's because they won the fight.
Yeah, you could argue that's it.
Right?
But
Why dance around with a hot potato when it's already cooked? They're already eating the French fries.
Sure. But my point is, he has done a lot to reach out to working class people and to reach out to traditional Democratic constituencies. And to me, that shows a certain amount of where it's just, it can't be argued that he's that far to the right. There were certainly candidates in the Republican primary in 2016 who were significantly more conservative than he.
Absolutely, in a traditional GOP sense. So Trump
Correct.
has usurped the entire GOP. It's
He has.
unrecognizable to a Reaganite, right?
Exactly.
Ronald Reagan would say, "You're not a Republican. You're to your exact point, you're some bizarre combination of FDR and Nixon."
Right.
You've got
You
the
just
executive control of FDR, and you've got the attitude and cojones of Nixon.
Yes. And you just nationalized Intel. You just took 10% government ownership in Intel, which would be called communism, socialism, just 15 years ago, right? So he's this weird mix of God knows what. And then I also think that, and there's a lot of books that have been written on this, that because so much of politics is symbolism, I think no matter how hard Gavin Newsom and other folks like Gavin Newsom try to show the world that they're centrist by having Charlie Kirk on a podcast, I think that the voter in that union hall in Ohio is still going to look at Gavin Newsom and say, this is a California Democrat. And it's just symbolic. California is the land of crazies. You are from San Francisco and you own a winery and I drink beer. And it's just symbolism, right? And so I think that even Democratic politicians who try to turn to the right are going to have a hard time. So again, it's authenticity. You need somebody who's real, somebody who can genuinely relate to people in the way that they want.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that return to honesty and listening to one's own constituents is the ticket to ride for the left. For whatever reason, Democrats have been lying as much as Trump has, if you really look at it. I mean, the Biden presidency, and it's easy to get partisan and tribal quickly, but I just think it's been disgraceful that the Democratic leadership has been this out of touch with their own constituents, to the point where this faux billionaire from Queens who wears his red ties too long, yes, who's had multiple affairs and is loved by evangelicals, this walking contradiction of value is just short-circuiting the left.
As I put it when he won re-election, so let's stipulate, let's take all the things that Democrats say about Trump and let's stipulate that they're true. What does it say that we lost to that? Right? If you think he is Hitler or Satan or some combination, or what does it say that we lost to Hitler? I mean, that's really what this comes down to, is we have to do some soul searching. And if we don't, the country's politics are going to be even worse than they are now.
So what are you up to now? You seem to have an obviously adroit very perceptive handle on the landscape, I think.
Thank you.
You're engaging. You are genuine. You're
Thank you.
friendly, and you come across as what you see is what you get. You've got a great track record in the California legislature. You've got bills behind you that really come across as helpful to the state, bipartisan. You've improved quality of life through your good stuff. And what's next for you? Are you interested in leaping back into this crazy fray?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I made a commitment to my wife when our son was born that I would wait to get back into politics until the kids were more grown. I think we're very close to that day where, the kids are grown up enough that they could handle me traveling again. Politics is tough when you have a family. You're on the road for so much of the time, and it's very hard to be present. And also, I mean, look, if you're honest, it's very hard to make a living and to give the kids all the things that I never had growing up. But I have a lot more left in me. The challenge, though, is I want to find a spot where I'm wanted. I want to get to a place where the country or my district or the state or wherever I decide to run, where they say, I want a guy like Mike again. If somebody wants somebody where, like, I'm going to run for office and I'm just going to tweet all day, oh, Trump, you're so messed up. Like, oh, I'm so clever. That's not my style. I want to roll up my sleeves and do stuff. I also don't want to get to a point where, like, I get pigeonholed and like there's no nod, at least, to the fact that I can work with people from both sides. So, when the country decides what it wants, then I think then there will be room for people like me. I mean, look, we talked about this with Gavin Newsom, and I'll say this about what he's doing right now. It is entirely possible that when Trump is termed out of office, that the country just at some point finally says, we're exhausted. I mean, it's just so hard to be constantly in this state of acrimony and battles. And, like, to some degree, the president is a reaction to the last president. And it's like, maybe the country will come back and say, we just want normalcy. We just want a guy who's like calm and quiet. And you see that. You see these things with reactions to people. And I don't know. So it's like, does it make sense to go so crazy and mimic him and everything? I don't know. I mean, who knows what the public will want in 2028? But my guess is at some point we will return to a sense of normalcy. And, it's almost like, when World War II ended, the British people booted Churchill out of office.
Yeah. Yeah. Churchill lost. He won the war and then they booted him out of office. Like, thanks so much. And you're fired.
It's 1946. We don't want to hear we're fighting on the beaches. Like, we just want, like, we want good times. Like, and so I think that there's a real chance that in 2028, that's what the country's ready for.
I agree. I mean, look at 2020 here. How did Biden win? Well, Biden won because everyone was just sick of Trump. I mean, right. Enough was enough already. And then Biden went to the other extreme to the extent that people were so sick of Biden that we brought Trump back.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say the same thing. I didn't want to say it because I was worried you'd disagree with me. But it's almost like Biden got elected because he came across as like, oh, he's a fundamentally decent guy and he's boring. But then it's like he got too boring because, his mental decline. And people were like, all right, let's get somebody strong who's back. And the strongest guy was Trump. But, 2028 will be a whole new ball game because hopefully we'll have politicians on the stage who are younger than, 80 years old running for office.
Right. Well, let's snap our fingers for a second and do a counterfactual exercise just for the hell of it. Let's say you are running. Let's say that the country is more sympathetic to a genuine, air quote, middle of the road guy like you, practical solutions, talking to the people. What would you do? How would you fix what's broke in 2 minutes or less?
All right, so I already talked about immigration. I think we need a fix on immigration, and I don't think it's that hard. I think you have to give people a path, and the message in the legislation has got to be, we are giving a legal path to greater numbers to come here. So help me God, if you break these laws, which are more lenient, we're really going to crack down. So it's a mixture of the very, very strong enforcement with the very, very kind, like recognizing that most people just want to come here and work and the American economy needs it. I also think we need to do something on crime. We talked about that as well. I think people right now are very upset at what has happened to not just our urban centers, but many other places that were once great places to be. And these issues are not just crime issues, they're environmental issues too. Because if you can't get out of your car and take the subway, which is the right thing to do, and Democrats say it's the right thing to do, then, we're just going to continue to have a really crappy environment and people aren't going to trust public transit. And then finally, I think we need to do something, and this is really big and it unites everything. We need to do something to make the people feel like they have a chance, a fair shake again, and a chance at like actually having a career that gives them all the things that Americans are used to wanting, which is homes, a safe neighborhood, your little piece of the American pie. Because I am seeing working class people and young men in particular of both political stripes feel a sense of hopelessness and despair. Like, wait, I did everything right. I stayed out of trouble. I'm seeing this with Black guys and white guys and rural guys and urban guys. It's like, I stayed out of jail. I went to school. I kept my nose clean. And I don't feel like I can ever buy a home. And I don't feel like I can. I mean, you're hearing people say they can't even feel like they can't get married. I mean, and these are things that's the downfall of a country right there, folks. I mean, if you have even 5% of the young population feel despair, and the despair drives them to drugs, which I think are being floated in our streets by foreign intelligence. There's my conspiracy theory. I think that is the downfall of a country. You have taken a whole generation or a portion of a generation and destroyed them. You've made cities unlivable, and you've made people lose hope, to sound like Barack Obama. So those three things, it would be like economic justice for working people, doing something on immigration, doing something on crime. That's what I would do first day.
Yeah, it sounds like a good top line agenda with sound bites that could be attached and your smiling face on the placards. We got to talk about AI because it's not only the ubiquitous buzzword, but it is completely transforming our society, if not overtly, then implicitly. Last 3 months saw $300 billion worth of data centers created across the US. It's pretty much propping up Trump's tariff-ridden economy. In addition to that, it's not yet, according to the data, but the fissures are already starting to form in terms of jobs, just what you're mentioning. If you're a Zoomer male right now, you're already disadvantaged. Women are doing so much better than men in virtually every category that we could list, from education to careers to support networks. And this is a crisis of young men in America, which by any stretch of the imagination is going to be exacerbated by job fluctuations induced by large language models that could do more and more of the things that people do. So how would President Gatto crack the AI code in terms of flipping the potential risks and hazards into a benefit for people in America who need help the most?
So that's a great question. So I take a slightly different approach on AI in that I think that it will be revolutionary, but I also think it won't be revolutionary. And I'll explain the won't first. I love history. I know this is, people are listening to this or not watching it, but I love history. And normally I film these things with a bookshelf of books behind me, and so people can get a sense of the history I read. But, when textiles started being formed by machines, and you read the contemporary stuff from the time, people said people will be out of a job and there will be no work for anybody. When you read even brilliant minds like John Maynard Keynes, right? Like he, in the 1930s, this is a guy considered the greatest economist of all time by many people. He wrote stuff that said there will be no more jobs in 10 years because of the washing machine and because of the car and because of the telephone, right? These predictions have been made. Oh, by the way, there's also something from Emperor Vespasian in about AD 70, where they said, why aren't you using more cranes to, this is true, Why aren't you using more cranes to build these Roman monuments? He said, because the cranes will put people out of jobs, right? Let's just make the humans like carry the blocks up for the Colosseum. So these predictions we have good records of them going back to the 1600s. We have great records going back to the 1930s. We have stuff from the 1980s saying that, the American woman will have nothing but free time on her hands because of the dishwasher and, blah, blah, blah. And all of those predictions have proven to be false. People still find a way to keep their days busy. People are busier than ever. Workers are busier than ever. Productivity is harder than ever. People are working longer hours than ever. So I think the economy will adjust, and I think people will still have jobs. They will shift, they will just change, but I don't believe there will be like this leisure class that has nothing to do and everything like that. However, I do think that it will be tremendously disruptive, almost in the way that the internet was to shopping. When the internet started, it was like, oh my God, it's going to change life instantly. And what it did is it first changed porn. It changed it put Playboy out of business because you could just go online and get your pictures, right? But then it changed shopping. But did it merit the crazy valuations of Cisco in 2002 or 2000 when the dot-com bubble burst? And most people look back and say, no, it really didn't. Cisco's share price still hasn't recovered from 2000, right? And, it's like, yeah, it revolutionized commerce and it revolutionized information, but a lot of the other predictions just didn't come true. So I think for AI, lawyers will be in trouble, but they'll find a way of defending themselves. Realtors will be in trouble. They'll find a way to be protectionist for their thing. Maybe accountants, maybe some of these service professions, but at the same time, never underestimate the ability of leaders to pass laws that protect these professions and for lawyers to make stuff complicated and to require real human beings. So I guess what I'm saying is it will change the world. I'm more worried about what it will do to people's brains. I'm more worried that nobody will ever have to learn to write again. That you'll have these AI overlays on text messaging apps. So if you want to write if you're 17 and you want to send a really loving text message to a girl or a boy, it's not going to be coming from your heart anymore. It's going to be written by AI. And so the question is, what do we lose as humans because of that? And that is a philosophical answer more than a political one, right?
Yeah, I would agree with you that it's hyped. Yeah. And I would also say that the internet has transformed entire industries in ways we never anticipated. So, Mom used to tell us never get into a car with a stranger. Yeah. And then Uber destroyed taxi services.
That's true.
And our mom told us never stay at anyone's house you don't know. And then Airbnb has upturned the hotel industry. And the list goes on and on for e-commerce, just as you mentioned, digital streaming and products and services upending the economy. But to your point, there's resiliency to it, and there's a sense of equilibrium that's been maintained. So there's been a reshuffling of jobs and money, but there hasn't been a cataclysmic implosion of society, the way some of the AI doomsayers are intimating. And I would agree with you. If, however, we get to the point of artificial general intelligence, which I think is much further down the pike than the investors are alleging, right? Because the AI companies need to hype it to get all this capital. I think it's got to evolve like our brains have. It's an emergent phenomena. But when that hits, when there really is a brain in a box who could do just about anything that a human can do, then we might really have issues, because for the first time, you're not talking about a cotton mill or even a printing press or a washing machine. You're talking about a larger workforce of robots. There are more people, in a sense, who can do everything that we can do. And then we might really have an issue.
That's true. And that brain, right, would not be limited by the bounds of biology when it comes to IQ. It would not be limited by hours in the day when it comes to learning. And yeah, if you get to a point where, it can continue to learn and you can ask it to do things like invent stuff. For me, it'll be very fascinating when we get to AGI, if it ever says that there's no answer to something, right? Like if you say
it's 42, Mike. The answer is 42.
yeah, exactly, right. And it's like, but I mean, it would just be so fascinating, right? It's like we get AGI, it's brilliant, it has an IQ of 3,000, and it's keeping learning, and it has all the knowledge at its thing. And then you said, "Hey, I want to create a drug to eliminate pancreatic cancer," and it's like, "Sorry, it can't be done." Like that would be weird, right? I think there would almost be disappointment with that. Um, and it's also like, garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if we put in everything we know about physics, like would it be able to come up with some new physical principle?
Yeah, that is the philosophical question. In computer science, it's P equals NP. Are NP complete problems? So, for example, solving a Rubik's Cube, the salesman's root, these kind of computationally intractable calculations. Like if you had a quantum computer running for the age of the universe, you can't solve these.
Yeah.
Are these a different category of knowledge? Or is it similar if we could train the models to actually be creative and solve these in innovative, unique ways we're not really thinking about? So you bring up an interesting point, which is what's unique about this mass of fat and tissue between our ears that has evolved over the course of 100 million years to not only engender consciousness as we know it, but the capacity for truly original thinking.
Original thinking and intuition, right? Some people say it's
Emotional
logical,
intuition.
right? But it's definitely not logical. These machines would all be logical, as far as I know. So, yeah, it's a fascinating question. It is really, really fascinating.
Maybe we could tackle it next time. I know I want to be respectful of your time. I know that you're getting out and about and you're spreading the mic out there. I would love to have you back when it's convenient for you to talk about some of the trauma that you've endured. Offline, we were discussing your James Ellroy-ish kind of past. I know that it's difficult, but you have made it public and published about it. And I think as its own topic, I personally would be intrigued, and I'm sure listeners would be intrigued to hear about your tribulations that way, how you got through it, the mystery that lingers, and really how you process trauma in a way that I think every American can relate to.
I would love to come back and talk about that. And my dad's case continues to be a mystery. It continues to captivate people in Los Angeles and California. And I would love to come back anytime and talk about that. And
that would be great. So we'll get you back on to talk about that. And I want to sincerely thank you for your time. I know you're ramping up the Mike Gatto tour. And I personally wish you the best. I wish we had more of you because you're not just shooting from the hip, but shooting from the heart. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that we need to bring back the center to this country. And I don't mean the political center, but the center, which is here, where instead of just rage tweeting, being so angry at each other and picking fights, we find a sense of solidarity and solutioning that benefits all Americans. We're not that different from each other. And in ways, we're so spoiled. We're entitled brats here. We have one of the highest qualities of life, not only on planet Earth, but in all of human history.
That's right.
And we're quibbling over nonsense. And I think that's a big source of a lot of these problems, too. Let's appreciate things. Let's show gratitude toward each other.
Totally agree. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Mike. And thank you for listening to the Bald Ambition podcast. Like, comment, share. We're going to have Mike back to talk about family. And thank you for listening.